evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cape Ann Chamber debate for the Gloucester School Committee. I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this tonight and also thank Chris and Gloucester Stage. My name is Susan Coviello and I'm on the Board of Directors for the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to introduce tonight's moderator, Bob Visnick. I'm standing right in front of him, so that's not handy there. Bob Visnick grew up here on Cape Ann. He has been in practice as an attorney in this area for over 20 years. He's the Rockport Town Moderator, a past president of the Rockport Rotary Club, and a member of the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Council. Bob is a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Air Force Judge Advocate General's JAG Corps, having served as a reservist at Hansom Air Force Base. Bob is the moderator for this evening's debate. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. Hello? Thank you, Susan. It's great to be here this evening as a person who was schooled partially in Gloucester. It's wonderful to come back to the community. And thank you all for volunteering to serve this community. I'm going to briefly give you what the procedure will be this evening. The candidates have drawn lots 1 through 6 prior to the forum to determine the order of speaking. One of our candidates has to leave a little bit early, so he's sitting next to me, though he's not the first candidate. But for the rest of them, the order of answering will move in sequence among the candidates. We will reverse that order for their closing statements. There's not going to be an opening statement, and I will allow the candidates, when they speak, to introduce themselves. There will be roughly 4 questions and the closing statement. The candidates will each have up to 90 seconds to answer the question, plus up to 30 seconds for follow-up comments after all have given initial answers, other than the first question. There's going to be a timekeeper who will give both a 30-second, a 10-second, and a stop sign. If you get to the stop sign, and assuming I notice it, I will stop you, except if you're in the middle of something very pithy, and then we will hear you finish that one thought. And if we have additional time, we will have more than the 4 questions, and we will get started. These are questions that I have, yes, that have been drafted by a think tank in Washington and flown up here, and they just arrived momentarily, and a CPA from PricewaterhouseCoopers delivered it in a sealed envelope. They gave it to the wrong person, but I eventually got it, and we're ready to go. So here is the first question, and the question is your elevator speech. Please tell us who you are and why the heck you are giving up your free time to run for the school committee. We'll start with Laura.
Hi there. So my name is Laura Leeson. I'm running for school committee number 1 as a parent of a Gloucester school student, and secondly as a citizen who believes deeply in public schools. To tell you a little bit about me, my family and I moved here 9 years ago, and we have 2 children, one who is at the Beeman Memorial School in the 1st grade, and the other in her last year of preschool. And once my daughter was entering kindergarten, I started getting very interested in the Gloucester Public Schools. And I started speaking to as many people as I could. Is that an echo?
Yeah.
Sorry. About the schools and to learn, what was happening here, what was positive, what was challenging. And what I learned was that there are tons and tons of devoted teachers and amazing programs happening here. But the general sense of Gloucester schools, especially as someone not from here originally, is negative. So my previous life was as a television news and documentary producer. I have over 2 decades of communications experience, and I decided to run for Gloucester School Committee to bring that experience to our schools, to advocate for our children throughout the system, and to communicate with Gloucester and the greater North Shore community about what's happening here. Thanks.
Okay, Jonathan Pope.
Can you see?
It's on.
It's on?
It's on.
Okay. Hello. It's on. amazing. My name is Jonathan Pope. I'm a candidate for re-election to the Gloucester School Committee. I was first elected in 1998. I served for 10 years. I went off for 4. I came back in 2012, and I'm still here. As you'll see tonight, you've got a lot of really good candidates coming on, and it's my hope to provide a transition for these new people who will be carrying the ball forward. There's a lot of initiatives started by the previous school committees, and there needs to be a lot of follow-through to see them through to the end. And it's my hope that I will serve one more term, and one of what I will do is will provide some historical knowledge for these great people that are running, as well as teach them how to get things done. I was brought up in Gloucester. My mother was a teacher. My wife is just retired. She was the SPED coordinator at Veterans Memorial School. I was a teacher before I started my cabinet business in 1985. Before that, I taught vocational education for special needs students in Middleton.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ida Shaker. I'm a parent of a Gloucester student. I've lived here for most of my life. In college, I studied psychology and early childhood education. And while I was advocating for my own child's needs, I realized that much help was needed in the district, particularly with our high needs students, as well as areas of social emotional education. So at that point is when I sought out our local CPAC and realized that we didn't really have one, which is a Special Education Parent Advisory Council. I have been working with them, and now I serve as a co-chair for our CPAC. At that point, I also reached out to the Massachusetts Families Organizing for Change and the Federation for Children with Special Needs, with whom I now help advocate for children with special needs, and I would really like to help the district improve those areas of need. Thank you.
And we're going to hear next from Joel, but I would just remind all of you that you have to have this microphone right up to your mouth so it'll pick up your voice.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for those of you who are at home watching. My name is Joel Favaza. I am running for re-election to the school committee. I am currently in my second term. I am a product of the Gloucester school system. I am married to a middle school teacher who teaches out of district. I have a high school senior who's about to graduate from GHS, and the reason you'll see me depart momentarily is that it's senior night for the varsity soccer team. She's the captain, and I have the privilege of walking her out onto the field at the start of the game tonight. I also have a 4.5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old, so I have a whole new batch getting ready to come through the system. And so that's my on-the-ground experience with the district itself. I'm a real estate attorney, which means I specialize in real estate redevelopment, which is obviously a big part of the capital plan that needs to go on for the district as far as what we're going to do with our existing facilities and our existing properties. And as someone who owns a business in the city of Gloucester, owns a home in the city of Gloucester, I understand that aside from parents, there's an economic repercussion to the decisions that are being made by the school committee on everyone in town, and I want to make sure that I'm able to make those decisions effectively and intelligently. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we hear from Samantha, I have been instructed to tell everybody not only should you keep your microphone right up by your mouth, but you have to speak up.
You can tell me if this is not loud enough. Is that okay? All right, good. So my name is Samantha Virga Watson. I'm a longtime resident of Gloucester. I attended all Gloucester public schools. I graduated from Gloucester High School in 2004. My husband and I both were educated in Gloucester and now live in the Magnolia neighborhood. We have a 4-year-old daughter and a 20-month-old daughter, and I'm a licensed social worker. So I'm running for school committee both as a young parent and as a social worker. I think as a mental health clinician, it's a perspective that's been missing on the school committee, and I hope to bring my experience working in this town, both at Pathways for Children as a social worker in the after-school program and in the teen parent program, and also as an in-home family therapist at Children's Friend and Family. So most of my work has been in this community, working in people's homes with at-risk youth and doing family therapy for 2 to 3 hour sessions at a time. So I'm very familiar with the needs of some of the highest needs students in our community and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kathy Clancy, and I am running for re-election for my 6th term on the school committee. I got involved in Gloucester schools when my son was 3.5 years old, based on a solicitation letter from the Gloucester Education Foundation. I got involved because the dream was to make Gloucester schools one of the 5 best districts in the state in 5 years, which was quite a lofty goal, but I loved the ambition that it provided. I also knew that my son was going to go to Gloucester schools and go to school with the children that he plays sports with and that he lives near. And we, when we moved here 25 years ago, embraced the diversity of this community, and my husband and I felt immediately at home here. My background, so my son is now a sophomore in high school. He's had a really terrific education so far in Gloucester schools, and he's really thriving at the high school as well. My background is in finance and operational management, so I feel like I bring, some prudent financial decision making to when we have to set budgets and priorities. I still am heavily involved and have remained heavily involved in the Gloucester Education Foundation, raising money, planning events. It's kind of my second love of things that I do for this community, and I hope to continue on the school committee. Thank you.
And we were to have a 7th, Melissa Teixeira Prince, and she's had a death in her family, and so she is attending to family matters and will not be able to be here tonight. So we move on to our second question, and Jonathan will be the first to answer. And here's the question. Enrollment in Gloucester schools has declined steeply over the past decade and is projected to drop even further in the coming decade, even as school budgets continue to increase. The school committee is responsible for setting the annual school budget. How can we meet the educational needs of Gloucester's students while keeping school costs affordable for the taxpayers?
Well, there's a number of pieces to that question. The enrollment is dropping. When I first started in 1998, we had over 4,000 students. We have less than 3,000 students right now. Rockport has about 9. If you combine Rockport and Gloucester, we still wouldn't have as many as we had in the year 2000. The costs keep going up, mainly because of the services that we are required to provide, and the extensive effort that we're putting into providing equitable education for all of our students. We have, at Veterans Memorial School, we have almost 80% of our students are classified as high needs, and in the combination of each grade, we have about 16 kids on special IEPs in the course of having about this more than half. So the costs continue to go up because of the services we provide. Give me another hour.
I know.
So it is true that the enrollment is going down. However, the services will continue to go up. We have more and more children being identified with needs. However, we are running parallel programs. We have gotten better at having more inclusion or integrated programs, but I believe a full inclusion program would help us eliminate the need for as many parallel programs and out-of-district placements. If we do it properly, we need to spend some time on the research and look at other districts that have done it and where it's working, and also look at those areas where it's not working. And I believe that if we do this, we can eliminate the high cost of parallel programs. Plus, the bill that was recently passed would also help reduce the tax burden on our taxpayers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and please, all of you, get even friendlier with your microphone.
Okay, thanks. So if we're talking about low enrollment, I think it's hard not to also talk about the fact that students are choicing out of our system. And so I think that as a school committee, we need to do a much better job of trying to understand why students are choicing out. And if we can get some clearer answers to that, hopefully we can help increase our enrollment and reduce some of the choice out students. And I think that that's a really important piece. I will say to what Ida mentioned, the Student Opportunity Act that was just passed will hopefully address some of the unequitable funding that exists in the state for high need students in particular, which we have quite a few of in our district. And so if we can get increased funding for that meets the needs of our population, the hope is that we can better close that budget gap.
I'll piggyback on what Sam said is Gloucester, unfortunately, is on the bad end of Chapter 70, where our high-value homes actually have an impact and make us look much more wealthy compared to other communities. So we, unfortunately, are in the bottom 15% in the state in terms of state aid, which I think puts a burden on all the city services and funding available for everything. Also, the school budget also includes health insurance, where the other city departments do not. They, if you look at fire, when their budget goes up 3% or 4% or whatever it is, that does not include health insurance because that's held in a different department on the city side, where with the schools in the past 10 years, I think we all know how much health insurance has gone up. So that is also part of our budget increase, and we continually have to figure out if that goes up 8%, you know, and we only get a 2% increase, how do we close that gap? And we have to cut elsewhere. So I do hope that the community in general realizes that the services we're providing and the students that we have, such as English language learners that show up literally without any English in their background. They come from backgrounds and situations where they just, you know, they thankfully are here and in a safe situation. And that is a requirement that we bring them up to speed on English within a very short period of time, and they have to take the MCAS pretty soon too. So, so there are costs that are very expensive relative to just trying to make sure that our budget kind of fits within the city ability to pay.
So, as Jonathan alluded to, if you were to take every student at the Rockport High School and put them at GHS, and take every student at the Rockport Middle School and put them in O'Malley, you'd still have fewer children per grade in those schools than you did when Sam, Ida, and I were there not too long ago. And so when I see the dropping enrollment, not just in the city but on this island, I think of consolidation and I think of regionalization. I think that that solves the issue as far as having excess capacity in these buildings, which are expensive to maintain, expensive to keep on. It also allows you to pool resources. If you have high need populations that need a number of paraprofessionals, a number of added resources in a classroom, and you have fewer buildings throughout the island with which you have to distribute these resources and these paraprofessionals. And we have paraprofessionals now that spend, you know, part of their week or even part of a day at one elementary school and then get in their car and drive to another one. So I think to deal with the declining enrollment, until we turn the city around and make it more attractive to young families to start moving back, you have to work on regionalization and consolidation. And again, thank you guys. I'm heading out tonight. Bye-bye. Nice.
You have up to 30 seconds to rebut.
I haven't gone yet.
So, after you go.
I haven't gone yet.
Yeah.
So most of my peers here have said this. One other issue, special ed needs, English language learners, They're just tremendous needs, and they cost money. You know, educating children costs money, and these especially cost money. Another issue that hasn't been brought up is the buildings themselves, and why why we've rebuilt one building and are going to be rebuilding another. The buildings as they stand are not efficient at all from a gas perspective and oil perspective. They're using a tremendous amount of utility cost. And looking forward, having more efficient buildings and fewer buildings will be a cost savings. That in addition to, I know that Joel spoke about regionalization. That's a significant thing to look at, especially insofar as joining forces with a district like Rockport, which does educate a quarter of their district, are Gloucester students, and then looking at how we can continue to work to be efficient with the city and our special eds programming. Thank you.
Okay, now, additional time if you would like.
Okay, I'd just like to elaborate a little bit on the school choice issue. For every child that's choices out of Gloucester district, Gloucester loses about $5,000 from the Chapter 70 disbursement from the state. They just take it and give it to wherever those students are going. We have almost 300 students going to Rockport student class, which means $1.5 million comes out of our Chapter 70 allotment and goes to Rockport. It costs them more than $5,000 to educate them, so they're losing money.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say with the MSBA process, Mass School Building Authority process, they do an enrollment study, and I know our enrollment has dropped a lot from where it was 10 years ago, but it really has stabilized in terms of births in Gloucester, and the projection for our elementary population at least is to stay fairly stable, maybe losing possibly 60 students over the next 5 to 8 years. So the sky is not falling in terms of births. Thankfully, there's still families with young kids represented. So thank you.
Okay. Question 3, we will start with Ida. Gloucester and the fair town next door of Rockport are currently working with a consultant to explore ideas and opportunities for regional collaboration. Please tell us whether or not you support this initiative and elaborate on your reasons why or why not.
Okay, so I do support the idea of regionalization, but it has to be done carefully. There are states that have done it across the board, like Maine, and it had failed miserably for various reasons. They did attach punitive measures to towns that chose not to regionalize. However, sharing resources would be really great opportunity for Gloucester. However, as Sam had mentioned earlier, we do really need to find out why students are leaving Gloucester. That would really help us understand that portion of it. Again, the sharing of resources would be great. I'm not sure how the superintendent process would be, if we would hire one, or I'm just not that familiar with that process there, but that could, in theory, it should reduce costs in terms of administration. And overall, I do support the idea of regionalization, but it's really getting everyone on board and making sure that we do so in a smart way.
So yes, I do support the idea of regionalization. I think sharing resources is a very important step as we sort of move forward. I would also like to mention that, with the school building project that's sort of coming up now with the East Gloucester Vets project, there's also going to be a Beeman Plum Cove project. And so with the possibility of regionalization, we have the opportunity with more flexibility, with more buildings with Rockport, and I think that that's overall a cost savings. I will say, though, that there is a vast cultural difference between Rockport and Gloucester, and it can't be ignored. When my mom was on the school committee, this topic came up and it was very quickly shot down. So I think we have to be very careful about how we move forward and make sure that we have very open and honest conversations about what that cultural change will look like for both communities.
I've been involved in initial talks with Rockport as we tried to narrow down what a consultant would actually look like. So I am in support of that exploration. I think the biggest thing is to make sure we continue to provide the opportunities that we currently do to our kids. We have more advanced placement courses than Rockport and other neighboring communities. We have, terrific STEM program. There are so many things that we do really, really, really well that, hopefully as time goes, are not as much of a secret. Please come visit the schools. I wish families that are thinking about choicing out would come visit our schools so they could see everything that's great going on. So as long as a regionalized approach, helps financially as well as providing better opportunities for our kids, I think it's a great thing for our community.
So my understanding of this study that's happening is it's not totally on regionalization. It's on the different ways that the districts can work together, whether that's sharing programs, whether that's more than sharing programs, sharing certain buildings. It's a look at various opportunities to work together. I think, as we've been saying already in our first 3 questions, any efficiencies that we can find in this system, we need to utilize. Rockport, I recently saw an interview with the Rockport superintendent being asked about exactly this question, and regionalization was not the word he was using. It was more about sharing programming. So I think we need to be very careful with our language as we sort of embark on any type of sharing with the Rockport system. And I think that if we're careful, we can see how the communities can work together, and it may be baby steps for a while. I suspect it would be if anything were to move forward. There is some deep hesitation, I think, on the Rockport side, but I think if we can work together gradually, careful of our language, careful to maintain, as Kathy said, the programming that we have, and to work with what will be best for all of our students, it could be a great opportunity.
So I've also been involved in the negotiations with Rockport and the formation of the RFP for the consultant, which is the Donahue Institute from UMass in Amherst. And part of the issue here is, and the things that Kathy and I, as well as the 2 representatives from the Rockport School Committee, and the superintendents made clear, is that we wanted to talk mostly about what was the benefit for students, and then as a secondary thing, talk about what was the financial impact. It's not easy to do, and as Ida alluded to a couple of things, do you have what do you do with superintendents, and how do you set up your administration? All of those things, if they were to proceed to a regionalization, have to be negotiated between the 2 communities, and they have to actually draw up a contract, and they have to, both communities have to vote on that and sign off on it, and it would be the configuration of the school committee, the share that the budget, how the money would be paid for by each community. It's not easy. And I spoke to the people in Manchester who went through this with Essex, and they said it took almost 10 years. So.
Okay, starting with Ida, anybody have any additional comments? Okay, we move on to question number 4, and we will start with Samantha on this. In recent years, Gloucester has been experiencing a net outflow of students through school choice. Why do you think this is happening? And what are your ideas for reversing this trend?
So part of this campaign season, I have asked some of the young parents parents that I know that have chosen to choice their kids to Rockport. And there's sort of a vast variety of reasons why people are leaving. And I will say that one of the common threads is our facilities. And so I think we really need to take a good close look at, as we sort of move forward with our school building projects, that, you know, it could impact some of these young families coming back. I also feel like young families are not visiting our schools before they make a choice necessarily, and Gloucester schools have a outdated bad reputation. And I think we can do a much better job as an overall community getting the word out there about the good work that our school is doing. And we've talked about this almost at every debate, starting with the website, having a much better social media presence, making sure that young families see and feel connected to our schools before they're even there. And so maybe as a school committee member, getting out into preschools, having those conversations, having coffees, making sure that people feel like they know what's available in our schools, because there's many things that I didn't even know were available. And as I've learned more, I'm more excited to send my kids to school here. I think we're very lucky to have the resources that we do, and I think a lot of people aren't educated on the options that we have.
So part of the initial years of the Gloucester Education Foundation, the focus was on bringing innovative and unique programs to the schools. And the focus for a long time was the middle school, where the Education Foundation funded 3 labs and project-based learning, and that led to the transformation of O'Malley to an innovation middle school. And we focused on the middle school for that very reason. We were losing a lot of kids when they were switching from 5th to 6th. Everybody was happy through 5th. But that trend no longer is there. We do not lose our kids going from 5th to 6th. So I think, we go back to what Sam said, make sure families come to visit our schools when their kids are little, and make sure that they at least make an informed decision. There may be very good reasons. They may have a grandmother that lives in Rockport. There may be a real valid reason why why any family chooses to not go to school in their home community. But we want them to be informed, and we want them to be proud of the community that they live in and the schools we have, even though they may not choose it. So I do think that whole awareness of what's going on and what we offer and all the great successes. I mean, our kids go to some of the greatest colleges, and so many kids have such experiences with clubs and athletics. I mean, they do it all, and I think they'd be the first to tell you how proud they are to graduate from our schools.
So as a parent who has been, managing the transition from preschool into the public schools, I've experienced this firsthand. We have a lot of my children's friends have choiced out. And I think, as everyone's alluding to, there is this idea that Gloucester schools are bad. If you are not from here, and if you're from here, I'm sure you've heard it. There's someone said to me actually when I chose to send our daughter to our district school, I couldn't do that to my child. So I think that there is a pervasive negative sense about the schools that may be based on old information and old experiences, and the school system, unfortunately, does very little to communicate a different message. So as a communications professional, as I started delving into this, I started to understand all of the positives, all of the programs that GEF has brought, the amazing work happening in the elementary schools, all the AP courses happening in the high school, but these things are not communicated to parents, and they don't know what it looks like when your child graduates from Gloucester High School. So this is my big thing. We need to be communicating. We need to be bringing parents in. We need to be getting it out on social media. We need to be having family meetings. We need to be going to preschools. We need to be introducing to people to what it means to go to Gloucester Public Schools and why they can be proud and excited, as I am, for their children to go to these schools.
Communications is clearly a big issue here. People don't realize a lot of things. They get their information from neighbors or who will say, oh, well, when I went there, it was awful. Well, when I went to Gloucester High School, there were almost 2,000 students in the building, And they didn't have what they called the new wing. It wasn't even there, which is the science wing. So the place was just packed, and it was a mess. It was very difficult and very overcrowded, but it's not like that now. There are less than 800 students in that building, and it's almost twice as big as it was. So we're fighting the past, and the communications is an important thing. People don't realize Rockport Elementary School has 392 students. It's bigger than any one of our elementary schools. 4 of our 5 elementary schools scored substantially higher on the MCAS than Rockport. Gloucester has a very diverse community, and I am hesitant to say this, but some people embrace diversity and some people don't.
Okay, so my understanding of the issue is actually a little bit different. The condition of the schools, yes, that's a problem, but the parents that I've spoken to that have choiced out of Gloucester, the common themes are bullying, lack of social emotional supports, addressing the needs of high-need students, and communication, lack thereof. Communication is huge. It's just not happening as well as it should be. In order to improve that, I would suggest exit interviews, or even the families that are already going to Rockport, I would like to interview them and say why. Why did you choose it? What can we do? Use that information to really target, you know, how do we improve those areas. Improving communication with families is critical. Also, I believe that district-wide trauma training and a better bullying prevention and intervention program is absolutely necessary. It's something that nobody really likes to talk about because it's, you know, well, it's a touchy subject. Well, we need to talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't get better. So I really urge the community to, you know, to help us in understanding why they're choicing out so that we can improve in those areas. Thank you.
All right, starting with Samantha, any rebuttal or further discussion?
I just want to say, when the superintendent first took his position here, our current superintendent, we asked for him to do a survey of those families that had recently choiced out. And the 2 overwhelming reasons were facilities, and they want their children to go with other kids like them. So this idea that, you know, there may be certain hurdles that we can't get over, but I think when people see each other that these kids are your neighbors, hopefully they'll make a decision to stay.
Any further rebuttal over here? Okay. Well, we have time for one more question, and that question is, what do you see as the role of Gloucester High School in promoting and preparing students for employment, including careers in the trades? And this one we start with Kathy.
I love this question. Gloucester High School has opportunities for so many different kids, and I think that's one of the things we do the best. We have advanced placement classes, we have supports for kids that, you know, struggle a little more with school, we have clubs, we have athletics, and we have our vocational program. And it's a complicated school relative to our neighbors in Manchester or Hamilton, Wenham, because their families all expect their kids are all, you know, without fail, they're going to go on to college. But I think our schools do good by making kids have a place. And the principal is famous for saying, you know, Gloucester High School, where there's a place for everyone and everyone finds their place. So I think the diversity and the opportunities we have prepare our kids really well. We have amazing STEM programs in computer science at our high school, and that is growing even more. We have 3D printers. We're preparing these kids for the jobs of tomorrow, unlike a lot of places. Our robotics program at the high school, I mean, kids leave Gloucester High School, they send back a message to the professor or to the teacher at Gloucester High and said, can you imagine this assignment? You taught me this when I was a junior, and this is a college level kid. So I think we're doing a good job, and we keep expanding and keeping an eye on what the, you know, what opportunities are available for kids, whether it's in the trades, or career in college. So, as I say, we keep continuing to explore what else we should offer our kids.
So one of the most exciting visits I had this spring was to the vocational programs at the high school. I was not aware of the top-of-the-line auto shop at the high school, where this was last May or June. I spoke with Jack Porter, who runs the shop, and he said every senior had a high-paying job leaving college or was on their way to a place like the National Aviation Institute. So that was an amazing thing. There's a machine tech, there's carpentry, and those are, you know, busy, active locations. There was electrical work. So I was very impressed with the trades that I saw at the high school. Sorry about that. And I think, you know, the teachers there were telling me they'd love more. They'd love more space for more kids in those programs, that they're in demand. As Kathy mentioned, there's tons of AP courses. There are, you know, the athletics that are giving, you know, I think that there are so many options. There are so many options at the high school. And that's one of the things that we need to be communicating much, much more clearly, is that there is a place for so many different kinds of kids, whatever your skills are. And then, you know, many of you may know the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute. There are places even beyond our school system here at home that prepare kids for the tech jobs of the future.
It would be really great if we could expand our vocational program to in a couple of areas that are clearly there's a market for people in Gloucester, and that would be healthcare as well as culinary and hospitality. The vocational programs that we have are not all completely well subscribed, and once again, that's another issue about communications. I think for a long time there was a sort of a mantra among parents that you got to go to college, and I think people are starting to realize now that that's not the case. As we see, you know, people coming out of college and struggling to find employment, whereas an electrician doesn't have any trouble at all. And we also implemented another program this past year with the local laborers union, where the students would get their academics at Gloucester High School, and then we would bus them down to the North Shore Technical School, and they would get instructions in trades. I think a good thing to do would be to have an introductory course and have it as a graduation requirement that all students would have to take some sort of basic industrial arts class.
I think Gloucester High has made vast improvements in programming, and they continue to do so, which I'm actually really excited about. I'd like to see more community collaborations working on city projects in areas of trade. I think it helps students to develop a better sense of purpose and connection to the community, which I think sometimes is lacking in schools in general, is that we learn all of these tools and all of this wonderful knowledge, but we don't really learn how to connect with the community based on the skills that we've learned. So I'd like to see more of that. I'm not sure how the logistics would really work out, but I think that's something that we could really look into and you know, grow on. Thank you.
So if elected, I will be a huge advocate for the vocational program. I would like to see it grow as much as it possibly can. I will say, and I've said this before, that based on the conversation that I had with the principal at the high school, the programs are skewed male. And so I think we need to do a much better job of making sure that we're reaching out to females in our schools to make sure that they feel comfortable in the vocational program if they have an interest. When I went to the high school, there was a culinary program and there was a child care program. Both of those programs are no longer there. So I would love to see more growth in additional programs. And make sure that if females want to go into automotive or construction, that they feel comfortable and welcome there. I think that starts really early on in the conversations that we have with young girls, similarly with STEM, and I think O'Malley's doing a really good job of making sure, and even the elementary schools, making sure that young girls are feeling more connected to non-traditional job opportunities. Thank you.
So, I'm a lawyer. I lied. We do have time for one more question. As they say, get over it. And so, here is our last question, and we start with Laura. Recently, the Massachusetts House and Senate passed a major education bill entitled the Student Opportunity Act. The bill is expected to be sent to the governor for enactment in the coming weeks after differences between the House and Senate versions are reconciled. If this becomes law as expected, how will you work to ensure that it improves educational opportunities for Gloucester students?
That's a good, important question. So what this, just some background on the Student Opportunity Act, it is trying to raise, oh, this just went off. Is it on now? There. It is raising the levels of Chapter 70 funding for all districts based on the recommendations of what should have happened since the first act was passed in 1993. So there's going to be just an overall raising of the amount of money coming, and then there's also some things in the bill to look specifically at high need students and special education needs, and to do funding for that separately. So it's not clear yet where the money's going to come down exactly. I think that ensuring our students use this money well, if you listen to the principals stand in front of the school committee asking for money for the budget every year, there's a lot of great things. There's a need for more social emotional care, especially at the middle and high schools. There are needs for more coaches, there are math and English language coaches now in the elementary schools that could be utilized in the middle and high schools. There is a tremendous need in our system for more English language learner teachers, and for more training for all teachers on how to work with students with different English language skills in their classrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, yours.
Is this working now? Yeah. If I had about 15 to 20 minutes, I could try to explain how Chapter 70 works, how the foundation budget works, and how Proposition 2.5 affects all of that. But my understanding of the Opportunity Act is there was a committee that basically made recommendations of changing the foundation budget. And the foundation budget is what the state says you should be spending on students across the state. And as Kathy alluded to, Chapter 70 then pays a percentage of that amount of money. And the Chapter 70 is divvied up the same way they divvy up lottery money. It's based on property values and income. And Gloucester does not fare well because of the high property values. We get the same amount of Chapter 70 percentage as places like Newton and Lexington and Weston and Manchester. So we only get a small percentage. That being said, they're going to raise the access to high need students, which we have our fair share of, and that should help us. So we should be getting more money, but I'll let other people talk about where to spend it.
Both of what they said, yes. The funding is supposed to really close the achievement gap. So it's supposed to help us provide equitable opportunities at education for all students. And that's high needs falls in there. We have a tremendous amount of high needs students in our district. I have looked up some of the ways that we can improve in these areas. Some of them are better supports in the classroom, better mental health supports, improving communication, outreach to families is one of the single most important things that you can do to improve school performance, increases graduation rates. It's just, we really need to beef that area up. Also, having classrooms that support the learning of our students, which we know by the conditions of our classrooms that we just currently, we don't have that right now. So hopefully we can address those needs and move forward. Thank you.
So I think everybody's done a really good job of sort of explaining how the bill will hopefully work. My understanding, though, is that there's going to also be additional funding for the MSBA or for school building projects, in addition to all of the other resources. So I will say, though, that if Gloucester does not take advantage of the opportunity that we have to use MSBA funding to rebuild some of our schools, other places in the state will, because that's sort of where the state is looking to put the money. There's many school buildings in this state that need rebuilding. And so I think this is an opportunity that we really need to take advantage of. And I've heard many people really question the process. And it just solidifies the importance, knowing that the state is putting more funding towards our school building project. And I hope Gloucester takes advantage of it.
So since I've been on the school committee, when the state gives more money for education, unfortunately it's been every district gets $20 more per student. So whether we're equal and equitable, fair, funding to other districts, we all get $20 more per student. So the Harvards of the world that don't know what to do with all their money get the same amount per student as we do. So I'm very hopeful that this bill does what it says, which is, literally look at our demographics and our need, and really does come through with significant funding. We have needs every year in our school budget that come to us. I mean, even things like new ovens, because our ovens don't work in our cafeterias, some of them, and they don't work well. So we have been making do in many, many areas, and I know from a taxpayer perspective, I'm sure that's what's expected, that we spend as little as we possibly can. So we've been kind of putting off and repairing. And we also, things like literacy coaches and things like that, and math coaches. Those are the areas where I think we can really impact student learning even more. So we're never at a lack of need, and the funding would also help the city if its overall burden, because the Chapter 70 comes into the city, and then the city gives us our overall budget. So the Chapter 70 doesn't necessarily come right to us, but hopefully it will help lessen the burden and provide more funding for the city in general.
Thank you. I'm going to give you all a chance now to get a sip of water, compose yourselves, but only for a moment, and then we will have our closings, and we will start with Kathy and move our way back.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. It's nice that every time there's an election, we have people really paying attention to education in Gloucester, and it makes it rewarding to do the work that we do. And some of it's not fun, some of it's not always pleasant, but it's all worth it as we try to keep making our schools stronger and providing the best opportunity and education we can for our kids. I spend a lot of time trying to advance and advocate for our schools. I will continue to do so. I take great pride in our community, in every aspect of our community, and our schools really deserve all of our interest and all of our attention and all of our support. And I will continue to do all that I can, not just for my son, but for everybody else that is in our district, to make it the best place they could possibly learn. Thank you.
So again, my name is Samantha Varga Watson. I'm number 7 on the ballot. And I say this every time, but everyone says that matters, so don't forget the last person on the list, please. So this is our last debate, and I just want to say that, you guys have a lot of really good choices, and that's really exciting, because there's been years in the past that it's only been the incumbents. So it's really nice that there's more people really interested in getting involved in our schools. So I would like to say that. If you agree that a social worker is necessary, I think social workers are necessary everywhere, to be honest, but I'm biased. But I think particularly on deciding boards such as this, it's really important to have a mental health perspective and somebody who's a trained communicator and somebody who's skilled at navigating really difficult conversations. So I hope I get your vote on November 5th. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming and for this opportunity, the Chamber of Commerce. Again, my name is Ida Shaker, and if I am elected, I will work to ensure that policies and goals are effectively addressing the needs of all of our students. So I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
As you can see, you have a lot of good candidates here, and I don't think you're in danger of going wrong terribly in any case. I'd like to thank the Chamber and the Gloucester Stage Company and all of you for coming out tonight on this kind of dreary night and listening to what we have to say about education. It's one of our few opportunities to actually address the community because nobody comes to school committee meetings except Pam over there and JD. So, our two fans are here. And so I don't know that people have a real good understanding about what we do and what we deal with on a weekly basis. So my name's Jonathan Pope. I've been here for a while. If you think the schools have been okay, then vote for me. Thanks.
So yes, thank you all for coming out on this dreary evening. I've enjoyed all of our debates because I get to hear what everybody says, and I'm always amazed that every single debate we talk quite a bit about communication and the lack of communication and the issues with communication. So I am a communicator. That's what I've done in television and in news and in nonprofits. And I believe that on the school committee, I would be a major advocate for not only our children, but for communicating with our families and with our community. I've gone to almost every school committee meeting, and Jonathan's right, almost no one comes. I think the way to at least start to fix that is to bring the school committee meetings into the schools and not have them at Blackburn Circle, which is not convenient to anyone, and start reaching out into our community more deeply so that people can feel invested and understanding of our schools in a way that would benefit all of us and mostly our children. I'm number 6 on the ballot. My name is Laura Wiesen, and I'd be grateful for your vote. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank all the candidates tonight. What a talented and passionate group you are. The community is certainly fortunate that you all want to give your time to the city of Gloucester, so thank you. Thank you to the audience. The National Park Service reports that this is the largest group to ever attend a debate in the city of Gloucester, so thank you for coming out on this evening. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, my name is Bob Visnick. Again, thank you and have a good evening.